Welcome into STL Sports Central. This is the Cards Central postgame show brought to you by DraftKings. He is Brenden Schaeffer. I am Chris Pelikan. Cards lose 8-2 tonight in a game that was pretty much over, Brenden, about 5 minutes in when Andre Pallante left a pitch up to Nathaniel Lowe, and 3 runs came in, and a left-handed pitcher was starting for Washington. So we knew that was going to be a difficult task for this group. And lo and behold, it proved to be a highly unentertaining game, and one that, is not doing anything to dissuade our concerns about this team from a starting pitching standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, particularly against left-handed pitching. I mean, all in all, there's really not a ton of positives to take away from this thing. So let me know what you got on this thing.
Yeah, I see the comments rolling already. That pitch by Pallante to Nathaniel Lowe, I had to kind of do a double take because he sort of tomahawked it out of there. How often do you see a hanging curveball still be like at the very tippy top of the strike zone? That was on a platter.
And I don't think it ever got above like 35 feet off the ground. I mean, he just hit a line drive directly into over the wall in right field. But yeah.
Yep. So we'll try to get to the comments. I know the frustration is going to be there tonight, and I agree with Pushing Daisies. That was not fun to watch. I wrote a quick little quip for STLSportsCentral.com before the game because I was doing my afternoon radio show in Columbia, and we were talking about, looking ahead to this game. Last night, I said it was a must-win, as much of a must-win as you can have for the month of July. The pitching matchup set up favorably for the Cardinals. You're a better team than this team. You're playing them at your place. Felt like after what happened against the Cubs, you just needed to have that one. They got it. Today, I said I think it would have been a really, really satisfying win for the Cardinals to get, which I guess is another way to say I wasn't expecting much with the Cardinals going against a left-hander like Mackenzie Gore. He's definitely Washington's best starter. But then you think, well, there are some guys in this lineup who have had good numbers against Gore. Sometimes they will, Chris, take a collective plate approach that can push a guy like Gore. Maybe he'll walk a few. You can get him out of the game early. And the Nationals do have the statistical worst bullpen in MLB with a collective ERA of 5.7. So, there was, I felt, a blueprint to the Cardinals winning the game tonight. And then that blueprint went up in smoke with Andre Pallante, the walk to Josh Bell extending the inning, and then the home run. That is just exactly the kind of stuff that the Cardinals cannot afford at this point with where they're at, because I saw it mentioned on Twitter tonight. Andre Pallante, if he's your number 5 starter, you're feeling pretty good about a rotation because that implies 4 guys are better than him. But he's their number 3 pretty clearly at this point in time, with Fedde and Michaelis trailing behind him. And then it just kind of gets pushed up a little bit more. You have more expectations in what you're going to get consistently from Pallante. Before tonight, he was 18 innings, 2 earned runs over his past 3 starts. He regressed back to the mean tonight, and the Cardinals just don't have the top-end rotation depth to account for what's sort of happening in the middle portion to the bottom half of their rotation right now. And Pallante got beat around tonight. He just wasn't good, Chris.
He is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Chris Pelikan. This is the Cards Central postgame show here on STL Sports Central. And folks, Brenden already alluded to it, but we would love for this to be your chance to join us. Obviously, lots of piss and vinegar, as they like to say, coming through in the chat line. But if you have not chimed in, please jump into the chat box at the bottom of the YouTube page. While you're down there, please hit the like and subscribe button and join our team here at STL Sports Central. So obviously Andre Pallante and his inability to do much tonight, a big part of this game. But Brenden, I mean, this left-handed pitching thing.
Yeah.
Before tonight, the last 4 left-handed starters who had faced the Cardinals shut them out. Andrew Abbott, you had Andrew Heaney, you had Shodi Imanaga, and you actually had Matthew Boyd twice. So sorry,
times.
5.
Yeah.
5. So I guess the good news is the Cardinals got on the board in the first inning and broke the shutout streak against left-handed pitching. But that was it. And again, Mackenzie Gore is a good pitcher. And the guys I mentioned, maybe with the exception of Andrew Heaney, are all pretty high-level guys. Having said that, I mean, I know this team misses Ivan Herrera, but I mean, you've got to be able to put some sort of offense together when the pitcher throws left-handed. I mean, this has been an epically bad spell against left-handed starting pitching, and I don't know that we're seeing a lot to get excited about to where we think this might just be a slight downturn. I mean, it has been horribly bad. for multiple weeks at this point in time.
Yeah, I guess the only bright spot of what they could potentially do moving forward against left-handed starting pitching is that we got a relatively positive update on Ivan Herrera's health. Like, if he goes out on a rehab, as he told reporters earlier this week that he hopes to do by either Thursday or Friday this week, and then that puts him in position to return from the IL immediately following the All-Star break. He is the best right-handed bat in the organization, and so in theory, he should be able to help you pummel some additional left-handed pitching. But without him, and I'll say without Jordan Walker, even though he was not performing when he was up, he's a right-handed bat that I'm sure as of March the 27th, they thought, hey, he's going to be able to be part of the solution to what we can do this year against left-handed pitching. You haven't gotten that. I don't think you're ever getting the prime of Nolan Arenado offensively back from him. Wilson Contreras is having an okay year, but the numbers are still down compared to what he was last year when he was the best hitter on the team. So those are your right-handed bats that really jump out to you, and that's the story. There's just not really a lot other than those guys potentially taking the step forward that we haven't seen from them collectively so far this year, and they've even tried guys like Thomas Sajaci, who's not really been able to perform. There's just not a lot from the right side, and then you can talk about the lefties in this lineup and hope that they can hit left on left, but that has seemed to be a revolving door as well. Like, you're not consistently getting that from Nootbaar. You're not consistently getting that from guys like Burleson and even Brendan Donovan. At times, you're just not quite getting as much from him when he's your leadoff batter every single day, and you're facing a lefty starter. That kind of quiets things at the top sometimes when he's not able to get going. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a quick fix to it. I think, Chris, it's a storyline that really you have to pin on John Mozeliak in the front office, but at the same time, it's not one that then should surprise us because we knew last year that they couldn't hit left-handed pitching, and they didn't really go out and make an effort to improve the right-handed stockpile in the organization, the bench depth from the right side, having professional pinch hitters to come in and take opportunities. That's been a sore spot going back to last year as well. And so I can't really say that we're surprised in a year where the Cardinals basically said, yeah, we're not going to do much to this team in the offseason. We're just going to hope our internal options can carry. Like, I think we're getting to a point in the season where we are realizing why that may not be a very viable option when it comes to the way the offense is constructed, and the starting pitching is very clearly starting to break down for this team. When you combine those things, which are the two most important elements of a winning ball club, you're like, oh yeah, this is maybe why the win total at Vegas was 77, 76 and a half, not, the 87, 88 wins the Cardinals were pacing to be on before the loss tonight.
Yeah. And, it's funny because you have a loss like tonight, and clearly this is reflected in the comments section. And obviously anybody who watched this game feels the same thing. You can't watch this Cardinal team, see Andre Pallante struggle the way he did, see the way the entire lineup struggled against left-handed pitching for the 6th consecutive time tonight, and feel good about this team. Having said that, look at the standings at this point in time, right? So Cubs, I believe, lost again tonight. So the Cardinals still 5.5 games back. And then Giants get destroyed earlier today. So the Cardinals are still a game and a half out of the third and final wild card spot. So,
yeah,
while I think two things can be true at the same time, which this team does not pass the eye test as a playoff team because of the just gaping holes that they have on their team, they're still in position to do it, And I mean, like, if anyone should sit there and look at a Cardinals team and say, hey, let's just get in. I mean, the last 2 World Series were just get in teams. It's Cardinal fans. I mean, they should see this. And so again, it's not a matter, and I struggle with this, Brendan, and I'm curious what your thoughts are because again, it's your lion eyes, right? Like, I mean, we see this team and say there's zero chance this team, even if they do get into the playoffs, can do anything against a more complete teams, which there are many of them in the National League. Having said that, I mean, they're right there. So what do? Do you sit there and try to make some moves? And again, I don't think anyone, even the staunchest, hater of John Mozeliak in the chat, is going to sit there and tell you to trade anything of future value. You don't need any of your top 10 guys in the farm because of what this year is to do something like that. Having said that, do you get aggressive in Mo's proverbial, bargain bin that he likes to shop in, start trying to find some right-handed bats, maybe try to find an upgraded offense, from the offensive standpoint, a catcher, as Pedro Pages continues to struggle there, they need any kind of starting pitching. And at this point in time, there's a lot of teams that probably have guys at the back end of their contracts who they'd take, a lottery ticket for. So, again, I can see two things being true at the same time, but I'm curious your thoughts, because I don't think this team is anything close to a playoff team, but seeing as they are where they are in the standings, don't you think that Mozeliak owes it to this fan base to at least try to get them over the hump and maybe see postseason baseball again?
I think it is simultaneously worth it to pursue postseason baseball, but I also can say in the same breath that I don't know that this particular Cardinals team is positioned to be one where you're adding short-term assets with a hope that you can attain that goal. There's a very crowded wild card field. And
Sure.
as you mentioned, I think we can go through each team. And other than maybe if you count the Cincinnati Reds as still being in that mix, I don't know that the Cardinals profile on paper as being as threatening as any of the other teams that are right now vying for a wild card. Now, maybe that changes when you get Herrera back, but I still think you're going to have the starting pitching woes that you can look at 40% of the rotation and say, I have no confidence in what you're going to get from them night to night. Especially, I mean, look, they served you well over a couple months this year, but Michaelis and Fetty recently have been getting completely firebombed. And now maybe Michaelis addresses that tomorrow and improves. But like I said, from a confidence standpoint, you have none. Pallante feels like sort of an every other, and he's a number 5 that is, I think, suitable to being a number 5. But he's asked to be the number 3 in your rotation. I'm not saying he's not a big league starter. I just think he is miscast if you are saying he's got to be our number 3 right now. He's a pitch to contact guy who doesn't get a ton of swing and miss, and that's going to mean there are going to be ups and downs with him. Libby has done a nice job, but you also are probably running into some. They don't call it an innings limit, Chris. Ollie has been asked about this when it comes to Liberatore, but they do say workload is something that we're going to have to pay attention to with Matthew Liberatore. And so we'll see what that ends up looking like down the stretch. Sonny is the one guy that you do feel really good about. Fans will kind of poo-poo that he only could go 5 innings in game 1 of this series. I don't care about that. I think the circumstances were such that it made perfect sense to be a little bit more conservative with him, and he's the one that said, hey, I need out of the game. So take it up with him if you have an issue with it. But I think it was totally reasonable, and he should still slot in to pitch on Sunday. All of this to say, like, I don't think they're going to match up very well rotation-wise with other teams. So are you adding a starter? They also need right-handed hitting help to combat lefties. Are you adding an outfield bat? I've seen Harrison Bader's name thrown around. That's a guy that's not on a long-term contract. Are you trading prospects to put Band-Aids on this team? Because that's not what the idea was back in the winter, back in spring. It was kind of like, hey, let's see what we've got with this group. The problem is we knew it was a flawed roster and a flawed group from an organizational depth perspective, and I'm including Memphis within that. Like, they don't have the horses that are ready to come in from a depth standpoint when it comes to starting pitching. Bullpen, you've got a bunch of arms, but you're not really sure how all of them fit, and it could be at the end of the day that the majority of them are not future big league contributors. We're going to continue to find out. They're churning through that group. Offensively, I think you had some hope in the group, and you saw some spark earlier in the year. But now that attrition is catching up to you and not everybody is completely healthy, you're seeing the weaknesses there. It is interesting to me that, I think one of the guys that is bagged on the most is Pedro Pages. In my opinion, and I agree with the Cardinals on this, their stance is that catcher defense is a very important thing. And yes, Pedro Pages is not really hitting a lick. I think that's another thing, kind of like the Pallante conversation. That's something that doesn't get noticed as much, that doesn't get harped on as much. If you have 1 through 7 doing what they're supposed to be doing in a contending lineup, Pedro Pages is batting 8th in your lineup, and then you've got Victor as your second leadoff man. But it's like Pedro Pages, can have an 0 for day, but, Joel Pozo came in tonight and was over. Arenado is hitting 244 with a 690 OPS, which is, 100 points higher than Pages, but Pages is not in there for his bat. So, like, I think it's one of those where people find the easiest thing to gripe about. My thought is, like, sure, down the road, like, there could be more conversations. I'm not sure if the Cardinals think that a guy like Jimmy Crooks, that a guy like Leonardo Bernal is going to be ready to take on the rigors of what they expect from the catcher position. So it's going to be a bigger conversation as time moves on. I can promise you, and I hate to say it this way because I'm a big fan of his game, Ivan Herrera is never going to be the primary catcher for the St. Louis Cardinals.
No.
I'm just going to tell you that now. No. He's not going to. And by that, I mean he's catching 110, 120 games a year. He's the best hitter in the organization. They got to have his bat in there, Chris. And the fact that he has missed 2 months of this season with a left leg injury, bone bruise in the knee, hamstring, like it's the same leg. Now you want to put him on his knees for 120 games a year. Like, that's not going to be the solution either. So as we're kind of thinking through this from a big picture standpoint, I don't think this Cardinals team is in a spot where they can really afford to sell off prospects or future assets for short-term answers to a problem that might just be too deep to be able to expect reasonably that they can sneak in with a wild card. If they get in, I think it's from kind of what the St. Louis Blues did, where you kind of stand pat, you kind of hope that you get healthy, and you kind of hope that somehow, some way, something gets sparked. You do have to make some moves with the rotation, but that could be as simple as McGreevy slotting in for Fetty and finding a way that maybe it's going to sound disgusting, but like somebody gets waived from another team and you pick him up because he's better than what you have in Michaelis. Like, certainly you throw Matz in there and there's a piggyback option from Memphis. I don't know what they're going to do there, Chris, but if we're asking the question, like, is this Cardinals team worth adding to? I don't think they should subtract, which is going to be another controversial topic because people just say, well, the Cardinals have been in the middle, stuck for years and years and years because of John Mozeliak's indecision. That's kind of fair. But I also look at it as like, man, they are close enough to where you can make a case that with a little bit of health, things could break in their direction. That's not going to make people excited to watch the Cardinals over the last 2 months if it results in 82 wins and another missed playoffs as a result of inaction. But I still feel like that's where they're going to be until proven otherwise. Like, John Mozeliak should show us, here's how I can execute a bold trade deadline on my way out. I can make a move for an outfielder that is under team control, and he's going to slot into one of those spots permanently. And to do it, I had to trade somebody from this year's team that you guys like as a fan base. But I had to do it because that's what the situation demanded. Those types of moves, maybe you can do something similar on the pitching side. Get a little creative. Maybe you even buy while you sell. A bold deadline, I think, would at least give Cardinals fans something to be excited about and talk about. I don't know if we're going to get that, though, Chris. I think it's kind of like steady as she goes, and you're just waiting to see, getting a sign from this team on the field of what Mozeliak is supposed to do, rather than the front office kind of stepping out and saying, we're bold, we believe this is what we need to do as a path forward, and trying to shake some trees that way. It's going to be interesting to see, though.
Yeah, and I would, couple of things to go back and forth with on you on that one. So number one, you talked about Pajes a lot. His defense. Earlier in the season, when this starting rotation was overachieving, it made a lot of sense to sit there and say, you can deal with whatever Pedro Pajes does offensively because for whatever reason, he is the crappy pitcher whisperer, right? Like, I mean, he's getting the most out of these guys who no one expected anything out of. We're at a point now where, I think it was Derek Gould who threw out the stat that the Card starters have allowed at least 6 earned runs in 5 of the last 13 games.
Yep.
It's just one of these things that they are not giving their team a chance to win. If your name's not Sonny Gray or Matthew Liberatore at this point in time, there's no chance to win. So, in my eyes, whereas every other position on the diamond has some element of drama behind making a move, right? Like, who are you going to block if we trade for this guy? Catching is the one position now where I think anyone can basically say that, I don't think Pedro Pajes is the long-term option at catcher for this team. I don't think Joel Pozo is the long-term option at catcher for this team. Try to address it now. And I've brought the name Sean Murphy up a ton because of what's happening in Atlanta. They love this rookie, Drake Baldwin. The guy's tearing the cover off the ball. Sean Murphy's got a pretty reasonable contract. He's a guy who was tied to the team before he got traded to Atlanta. This is the Braves are in a complete and total tailspin. This is the kind of guy I think you bring in to provide a veteran presence. He takes care of catching for you for 2 more seasons after this one. And I don't think it would come at a big price because he still is owed $45 million. So, it's one of these things. I agree with you wholeheartedly. There are, go to Baseball America's top 30 prospect list for the St. Louis Cardinals. And basically I'd say you go to number 15 and below and say unavailable. So, 15 and above, we start talking about guys who maybe are a little bit more of the proverbial lottery ticket where, there's certainly some level of a hole in their game and there's a reason that they're not as highly thought of and that sort of thing. Those are the guys you deal from, right? You don't talk about JJ Weatherholt. You don't talk about Tink Hence. You don't talk about Leonardo Bernal, any guys like that, right? This is John Lester, Jose Quintana, bargain basement shopping. And at this point in time, I just feel like there are going to be guys they can make moves that every fan will probably say, really, this is what we're going to come up with. We're going to come up with this guy who's 37 and has a 6 ERA right now. But I think the truth is, if you look back, those are the kind of guys who succeed, and I'm a big change of scenery believer. It's the reason that I still probably I hate this. It's a not very fun opinion to have, but I don't think Jordan Walker will ever be a good St. Louis Cardinal. I think it's very possible that he ends up being a good some other team.
Yeah.
It's the same with Sandy Alcantara have won a Cy Young. Zach Gallen won a Cy Young if they were still in St. Louis. Sometimes people just need to go somewhere else to see different things. And it works both ways. It's happened good for the Cardinals. It's happened bad for the Cardinals. So I just think that if you put it in your mind that you cannot touch anything that you think has some possibility of being a part of the future, if that's in your mind, but you want to get aggressive on all of the TJ Maxx specials, I think it's worth it for this team to try that, because what they're doing now seems to not be working. They're in a bit of a hamster wheel of, hey, Sonny Gray throws a good game, and then one of the next, Michaelis, Mats, or Michaelis, Fetty, or in this case, Pallante throws a real turd. And so it's just like, let's break the monotony up a little bit. Let's try something different. And, again, whether that ends up making this team a true playoff contender, because again, to your point about the wild card, right, which seems like the most logical and realistic path. I mean, the teams that we're talking about, right, like at this point in time, you're talking about 5 teams battling for 3 spots. You mentioned the Reds kind of on the outside looking in, but you've got the Phillies, Brewers, Giants, Padres, and Cardinals. The first 4 teams I mentioned seem to be significantly more well-rounded than the Cardinals, right? And so they have to, not only do they have to be better than one of them, they have to be better than 2 of those teams, basically, to get into the postseason. So right now, I just don't know how anyone can look at this team, look at those teams and say, yeah, I really like the Cardinals' chances. So they got to mix it up somehow. And again, I get it's super complex. This isn't your 2004 to 2006 St. Louis Cardinal team where there's so much talent. In 6, they just needed to get healthy and get it all going to win that World Series. This is a team with a whole bunch of question marks. Having said that, they're close. They're in a position to go for it. The fans are tired of what has been. And again, I just think you can supplement this roster, give, people the runway they still deserve, but give your team a better chance to win without mortgaging the future. It might be a tightrope to walk, but I do think that John Mozeliak might be able to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's what he needs to be trying to do. Like, I at times John Mozeliak feels like the media is really hard on him and stuff, and I think a lot of fans would probably disagree with that assertion. And my opinion is, like, there's an element of fairness where you try to understand a context of a situation and bring that into it when you are analyzing it, whether you're going to be critical, whether you're going to say, okay, I understand why this, that, or the other might have happened. When it comes to this trade deadline, what do you possibly have to lose? What are you clinging to about the present state of the organization that is just so precious that you wouldn't be willing to roll a few dice and make a few bold moves? And like you're saying, you're not advocating trading away top prospects, but like there are names that people in the chat enjoy, like Nathan Church. And I think maybe he's a really good ball player. He's got great numbers at AAA. But if the Cardinals have determined that here are these other left-handed outfield bats that are all ahead of him in the pecking order, and it's going to stay that way, trade Nathan Church for something that you need. Like maybe another team would find him more useful. And then the Cardinals fans can say, see, they let another one get away. I think those types of moves, decide who's blocked and then trade those players, or decide that, you know what, it's actually the players at the big league level that need to be traded away because they're the ones blocking the next step of an organizational guy that needs to come up and get his chance. Whichever direction you choose to go on that, that's what they're paid to figure out. We're paid to talk about how they did with it. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, look, man, we've had these types of discussions for years and years and years. And I know this year was supposed to be a little bit different where the expectations weren't there. But guess what? Like, you're in the mix right now. Yes, I think it's owed to not only the fans, not only to the organization, not only to like the players that are actually performing on this team to have the Cardinals 5 games above 500. I think it's owed to all of those people to maybe consider not starting guys that have, ERAs in the 5s anymore when you do have other alternatives. And now would probably be the time to act because you can make a move with bringing up McGreevy and taking out somebody who's not performing. And if that doesn't answer the bell, you can see where your record is in late July to then be able to make an additional move or decide, nope, it's not our year, and then sell. Like, I do think if the Cardinals are going to just stand pat, what are you doing that to gain at this point? Because probably where you end up is 82, 83 wins, just like you had last year, if you really don't do anything and you keep it going with Fetty and Michaelis and say, well, we're going to stay the course, like it's not keeping fans coming to the ballpark to do it that way because they're not fooled by the potential of 83 wins right now. I think the announced attendance was 20,000 tonight. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not blaming the fans for that, but that is a reflection of the way people feel about the organization right now. So if that is the case, what are we clinging to by, just trying to ride this train all the way to the end of the rail here, hoping that instead of 83, you luck into 87? Like, if you really think 87 is something you want to shoot for because it might be enough to make a postseason berth, then yes, I think they should be considering the moves in the margins that can help them get there. If not, I think trying to make multiple trades before July 31 and have a bold deadline where maybe you actually do trade somebody like Ryan Helsley if you get enough interesting calls on him, because you're realizing, we're not really in that many safe situations anyway right now, and we're probably not going to go very far even if we keep him. You could make the kinds of bold moves that we have not historically seen the Cardinals make. I'm not advocating one direction or the other. I would just, and I think the fan base feels this way, prefer action over, well, let's kind of write it out and see, because I think writing out and see is going to land you where you were last year in a little bit of a different way, because you've done it on more of a shoestring budget this year. You didn't sign guys in the offseason and you let high-priced players go in the winter. All that is well and good, but I do think it boils back to owing it to the folks that are invested in all of this to at least try to make some small moves in the margin and see what teams you can relate to. If there are teams that in the past John Mozeliak has just not been able to have relationships with, to trade with, okay, Chaim Bloom's involved now. Let him have some opportunities to talk to other executives, work some deals, and see what you might be able to come up with that's bold, creative, and can, if anything, set the course for 2026 a little bit more clearly, so that when Chaim takes over in the winter, he doesn't have to do it all at once. It's hard to make 5 trades in an offseason, but if you make 2 at the deadline and 3 in the winter, suddenly it could be a very different looking Cardinals roster in the ways that it needs to be. But when it comes to this conversation about the wild card race, I actually don't care what the other teams are doing. I don't care if the Cubs are winning, if the Giants are losing. I want to look at what the Cardinals are doing, and are they doing enough to say this is worth adding to, or is it just not going to be their year and you consider another direction? It's nice that they're still only 5.5 back of the Cubs, but I don't know what difference it makes if the Cardinals aren't going to find themselves as the team that has enough horses to get to the end.
He is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Chris Pelikan. This is the Card Central postgame show right here on STL Sports Central, and all content on STL Sports Central is presented by DraftKings. Go ahead and download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, which gets you $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Cards lose 8-2 tonight to the Washington Nationals, but Brenden, not all news terrible in Cardinal Nation. J.J. Weatherholt, last year's first-round pick, the 7th overall selection from West Virginia, makes his AAA debut tonight. Home run, triple. The kid is as legit as can be. The AAA clock has started. At this point in time, J.J. Weatherholt is official. The J.J. Weatherholt to St. Louis talk can really sort of begin in earnest. The guy has been nothing but short of spectacular all season in Springfield. He was advertised as a darn near ready hitter. That looks to be the case. He's got defensive value at multiple positions on the field. Is this the time for people, and again, I know that our good friends in the chat room are looking to bring anybody up at any point in time. What are your thoughts on J.J. Weatherholt's timeline? Again, the guy looks absolutely legit. First game tonight, seemingly, it couldn't have gone any better. But this is the first kind of prospect of this level the Cardinals have had in quite some time, probably since Jordan Walker was sort of floating around in those top 10, overall rankings a few years back. And, again, this kid just looks like he's the real deal. And I know people in St. Louis are going to want him, especially for a team that's seemingly a star for offense at times like this Cardinal team.
Yeah. So timeline for JJ Weatherholt is probably the topic of conversation that everybody wants to hear about. And I do have pretty strong opinions and beliefs that I'm right about them to say what I think is going to happen here. When it comes to Weatherholt, you got a few things going on. Number one, people want to know what position he's going to play because Mason Wynn's obviously got shortstop locked down, and Weatherholt is therefore going to have to probably move somewhere else. I think that's fine. It doesn't bother me that in AA he largely played shortstop. I will be interested to see if they put him in the outfield at all in the rest of the remainder of this season in AAA, just to get an idea for whether or not that might become a possibility for him when it comes to a promotion, maybe sooner rather than later. Checking because I'm not aware. Where did he play defensively today in Memphis? It was shortstop, so they're starting him at that same position. He was 2 for 4 with the home run in game 1. They're actually still playing game 2, I believe, right now. He DH'd for game 2, didn't come up with anything offensively in that one. But game 1, the triple, by the way, I feel like was kind of a sun ball that got hit at a fielder, maybe a favorable scoring, but that's the way those work. The home run, you can't take that away from him. So already he's coming up and showing, hey, I've got an opportunity to really showcase that my bat is as ready as can be. Now, I would also point to Jack Caglione of the Royals, who was called up to AAA and hit like 10 home runs in a week or something ridiculous, and they called him up. And he has really been struggling, like to the tune of a 440 OPS. He did homer last night for KC. I say that because they were drafted next to each other, though, and it's taken some time for Caglione to figure things out. So just because JJ comes up and rakes in AAA does not necessarily mean, oh yeah, he's ready for the big leagues. That being said, I'm looking at Weatherholt as being a pretty important part of the 2026 Cardinals. I do believe that he comes into spring training with every opportunity to make that team out of spring. And if he doesn't, I think you'll see him shortly thereafter. Where he plays is a question. That's also going to have to be determined by who the Cardinals trade away, I think, in the offseason. Like if you trade away Lars Nootbaar, like some are advocating, okay, maybe JJ's your left fielder. If you trade away, some from your second base stockpile, whether it's Gorman, God forbid, Donovan, which I would not advocate, then okay, very clearly could fit at second. You trade Arenado, okay, maybe he plays third or somebody else slides to third and that sticks JJ back at second. A lot of ways that could go. How soon could he come up? Let's say he does exactly what Jack Caglione did for the Royals in Omaha, hit 10 home runs in a week or whatever it was, and they said, okay, fine. We give up. We concede. Twist my arm. We're calling him up. I think that would wait until the Mason Wynn deadline of 2023, by which I mean the Cardinals waited until there was not enough days in the calendar remaining for Mason Wynn to exhaust rookie eligibility for the following season. You will not see JJ Weatherholt before mid-August, period, the end. There's no way. But by the time you get to mid-August, let's say there's a bunch of injuries at the St. Louis level. Let's say he's just absolutely tearing the cover off the ball. Are there ways that you could envision, that I could envision, he makes his debut this year? I'm going to say it's not impossible if he has a Caglione-like run in AAA over the next 5-6 weeks. But I think they will plan it down to the day at a minimum because there's no reason to exhaust rookie eligibility if the guy is potentially as good as everybody thinks he can be. That being said, do I predict he will make his debut this year? I would probably say no, just because I don't know if he's going to OPS 1,200 at Memphis through 6 weeks. If he does, there will be loud conversations about that, but I would say 2026 would be my expected ETA. He can force that issue, though. Just don't expect to see anything before that deadline of, I think it's like 130 at bats, Chris, at the big league level. Make sure he doesn't exhaust it, and however many days of service time. That's not gaming service. That's not the same thing, but there's a reason that you would do it that way. Even if you bona fide knew the kid was ready and had nothing left to prove at AAA, you would do it that way because if he can be rookie of the year in 2026, you get a draft pick that is pretty valuable toward the top of that next draft. So that would be the reasoning behind it. It's up to him, though, Chris. I mean, if he continues to perform, he will turn heads because there's nowhere else to go but St. Louis. They've called him up to all the places he can go. So it'll be fun to watch over the next month or so.
And I think one thing to factor in, and this is, you don't really know exactly why this was the way it was, but obviously Chaim Bloom is going to be the guy running the show sooner than later with this team. Tampa, which most people would probably concede where Chaim Bloom worked prior to working for the Red Sox, that team holds prospects in the minors for probably a half season to a year longer than they probably should. A lot of people would say that is 1,000% the very, very cheap Tampa ownership trying to figure out ways to manipulate service, so on and so
Sure.
forth. Having said that, Tampa is known as one of the best developers of talent in the game. So maybe it's not just, the idea of trying to game service time. Maybe what Tampa has figured from an analytical standpoint, whatever it might be, that once you think a guy is ready, give him 3 to 4 more months in the minors, and then he really will be ready. And I wonder if that mindset will go into Chaim Bloom's thought process with JJ Weatherholt. I know it would drive fans insane, but I just think it's something to keep in mind, because if you look at most of these guys, in Tampa, Junior Caminero now, who still is a very, very young guy, but Junior Caminero was tearing the cover off the ball AAA long before. I mean, there were people clamoring for him to be in Tampa, 6 full months before he ended up getting there. That's the same strategy that they have used for years and years and years down there. Again, probably to game the service time thing, but I just wonder how much that's going to factor into the decision about whether, do we want JJ Weatherholt to finish in Memphis, have a really good year, and then play the next half season there as well, just to solidify himself as somebody who has zero to prove at the next level, that sort of thing. Again, this guy looks like he's a franchise cornerstone caliber player. He's, I don't know that he's going to be a 30 home run guy but I think he's one of these guys who's going to be a 300, 350 on base, 450 slug kind of guy, playing a solid defense wherever that ends up being, if that's second, if that's third, if that's left field. The guy athletically can do it all. And so he seems like he's one of these guys who, do we learn from Jordan Walker a little bit? Do we say, maybe we don't push this kid? Maybe when we think he's ready, we let it marinate just a little bit longer. So, I think it's something that should be factored in and thought about. But again, I also know that you can discourage, minor league players if they do everything that they're told they have to do, and then they're still languishing, right? And obviously it's not just a matter of, hey, I want to play in the bigs. It is massive financial differences. When they're making a couple $1,000 a month playing minor league baseball versus making, $10,000 a game, at the bigs. I mean, these guys, they start, look at what happened with Chris Bryant and the Cubs. He hated that organization for holding him back the way they did, and left in a huff, and was never going to sign a contract with them. And so you got to balance it all. But, I think right now, for me personally, and I would hope that this is the way the mindset of Mozeliak and Chaim Bloom is, what is the best thing for JJ Weatherholt to be the guy that this team needs him to be? That's the question.
Yeah. Don't look at team need on the current roster to determine this, and they won't. I think a little bit of the Tampa thing that I would push back on is just the fact that Chaim was not like running the Rays at any point. And so like influence, sure, but we don't know maybe the extent to which. I do think he maybe, you could draw a comparison and say, man, the Cardinals were rough on some of those guys in ARB this year, maybe even a little bit more rough than in past years, taking Nootbaar, Donovan, and Pallante. That was unusual to have that many. Does that come from Chaim Bloom coming in and going, this is the way that you have to do this business, and we have to be sticklers about it? I'll be curious to see whether that becomes more of a trend in the future. And you talk about kind of alienating players. Like, you wonder, did that happen already with Brendan Donovan? I think he's a pro's pro, but like, I also think that, some of the things that happened through that art process didn't sit great with him. And I don't think he's wrong about that. So interesting to kind of see the way that may play out moving forward. When it comes to Weatherholt, though, again, I think people are going to have the inclination that if they look up in a month and his OPS in Memphis, when they go click MILB.com and they see 1,000 OPS, they're going to say, done. I know he's ready. Bring him up. And like, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. The other part is he did just get drafted like last year. So he, as far as like not making much money in the minors, he at least has that signing bonus. It's pretty recent. Like, he's not one of those guys that has had to toil in the minor leagues. I do think of guys like Jordan Walker, because the Cardinals had him skip AAA entirely, and I don't think they'll ever do that again. Granted, it's going to be different people running the show, but that, I'm not saying that they would, say 100% mistake, we shouldn't have done it, but did they see team need combined with exciting young player and just try to force it into happening for Jordan Walker? I think they did. Did that cost him along the way? The degree to which that's true, we may not ever know the answer to, but probably to some extent. So you do think about those sorts of things when it comes to JJ Weatherholt. which is why I think it's unlikely that we will see him this year. It will be fun if he is OPSing 1,000 and we can talk about, oh, you know where he'd fit. But it's easy to think about coming into spring of next year. Like, I don't want to see the Cardinals do the Tampa thing where it's like, well, halfway through the season, they're going to wait and then bring him up. If he's that kind of talent, you might as well have him from day one if you think he's ready, because it can benefit you as an organization to win the draft pick. So where will he play? That's going to be part of it. But I could give you 22 different iterations of what's going to happen this winter between now and this winter, because maybe some of it comes at the deadline. Nootbaar is traded or it's Gorman. Burleson is traded or it's Donovan. Gorman and Burleson are traded, but because they want to bring in somebody else that's going to play right field. Jordan Walker is traded or he's not. Like, there's a bunch of guys where when you think of the term like the core of the team, we know who it's been. Who is the next iteration going to decide that it is now? Would they do something so bold as to trade somebody like a Nootbaar or even like a Donovan because they say clock's ticking, we're not going to be able to sign them? This is the way that we have to go about that. Will they do that? And then fans will decide, do I agree with that or do I hate it? And like, that's fine. Those will be conversations that happen if something so bold occurs. My point with this is all those moves are going to be the things that kind of go, oh, after that, where Weatherholt could play. Like, there's going to be an opening somewhere that if the bat ends up looking like it is MLB ready by February, I think he's going to be in the opening day lineup. Doing it before that, especially like, you don't want this year's team and the needs that it may have to influence that decision. Do it on its own merit. If you think he's legitimately ready, well, we're calling him up. And now we've seen Nootbaar not produce. Nootbaar's actually sitting because Weatherholt's going to play. Like, again, not advocating for that. It's not like saying Michael Ciani should be coming up and playing for Nootbaar. By the way, Lars Nootbaar, 2 hits tonight, Joe. Not sure if you saw the game, but continuing to think his OPS might be higher than Ciani's in AAA. And I am a Michael Ciani fan, by the way. Think he should still, every day I'll say it on the show, should be on the roster today, should be on the Cardinals roster today, because I don't care whether he hits lefty or righty when Garrett Hampson is averaging 170 and, Sajasi's a righty that's not producing. Like, you could totally find the value in a guy like Ciani just coming off the bench doing what he does. Point being, with Weatherholt, proceed with caution, but be excited, because I think this is probably one of the more exciting things that is happening right now in Cardinals land. And so it'll be fun to follow in the days and weeks ahead.
Brendan, one more topic before we get out of here. So Sunday is the amateur draft. Cardinals picking 5th overall. It's the highest they've picked since they took J.D. Drew in that same slot.
Guy.
Yep, back in what year was that? 1993?
98.
98. Okay. I was only 5 years off on that one.
I was only 4 years old, so there you go.
I was much older than that. I promise you that. But and again, without getting real in depth into this whole debate about who the right player is, because the truth is there is a lot of crapshoot in drafting baseball players, right? But from a philosophical standpoint, the way this draft is shaping up, it looks like there are some premium college arms. You get the name Cade Anderson. If you watch the College World Series, he was the one who struck out 19 guys for LSU. You've got a guy like Liam Doyle from Tennessee, who was another one who I believe threw a no-hitter at one point in time throughout the course of the year. Big guy with big stuff. Jamie Arnold from Florida State. Big established college arms that probably are very close to the majors. And then on the flip side, you've got a couple of high school shortstops. One of them people will know, Ethan Holiday. That is Jackson Holiday's younger brother, Matt Holiday's son. A kid named Eli Willits, whose dad Reggie Willits played in the majors for the Angels. A guy named Billy Carlson. These are really high level young high school shortstops. You have such a contradiction, a paradox, like between these two. They're like, is your future a year or two away? Is your future 5 or 6 years away? And I know you just can't look at it that way, but without getting into real specifics about who you think they should take, if you are Chaim Bloom and you're running this draft and you're looking at the minor leagues, what direction do you go? Do you go with somebody who is more ready-made, or do you go for that potential upside 3, 4, 5 years down the line?
You're never going to be drafting top 5 again, ideally, right?
Hopefully.
So, and look, you haven't done it in 27 years. So maybe 27 years from now, you have a chance to do it again. Last year, you were 7th, which actually kind of pays off because you're in the lottery again this year. It all works out. And you got Weatherholt too. So that was a guy that people thought was a lottery type of pick, a top 5 pick, who the injury had him drop. And here he is knocking on the door now of a big league debut at some point. In my opinion, first of all, ignore position. When you're looking at high school players, ignore it, because they damn well better be a shortstop if they're a high school player that you're taking, right? In the top 10 of the MLB draft, because that's the best athlete on the field. So that's number one. Would I rather see the Cardinals take the archetype of high school shortstop, elite player that could have an elite all-star, perennial all-star bat 3 to 5 to 7 years down the road? Or would I rather see the arm that we know they desperately need, but now I'm allowing team need to influence my decision over just taking what I believe to be the best player available? Either way, you're getting somebody that projects to be very good. And I would almost say that depending on the style of arm, like if you get a real hard-throwing, stuff-centric type of arm, that could be really valuable, because we clearly don't see those at the big league level right now. And so you could be tempted to do that. But also, if you brought the guys in that you think you did, when it comes to Heimblum, Rob Serfolio, the staff below him at Pierpont, like the guys that are handling a lot of the organizational changes down below, that I think you're already seeing some benefits from for guys like TK Roby. Quinn Matthews will continue to benefit. Hopefully Tink Hens can stay healthy and be durable. Eshawn Henderson, like the list goes on. Those guys 2 to 3 years down the road might be your rotation if things break right. So for me, I think my inclination would be, just in terms of philosophical, what archetype are you leaning? Unless somebody, one of the arms drops that they figure is gone, like one or two, like Kate Anderson is gone, right? Ethan Holiday is gone. We just kind of know which guys are not going to be there. Unless somebody drops, I'm taking the high school shortstop that they believe, scouting wise, has the highest upside bat, and I'm probably leaning a little bit more into power with that as well. I do not care what they project him to be defensively. Like, I couldn't care less. If he's playing shortstop in high school, he's probably not going to be, any worse than Burleson in right field. So that'll be just fine down the road. What's the bat that can be a legit centerpiece bat that you haven't had since Albert Pujols? Like, do you think that you can have that bat from the top of this draft? If you don't have that belief about any of those high school kids, okay, maybe different story. Maybe you take a Jamie Arnold. But I would like to see, because with pitching, man, the flame out rate just seems like it's so pronounced. Like, you could get the next Skeens, but they already knew Skeens was going to be Skeens when he was in college. This isn't, I don't know that there's a Skeens in this draft, and if he is, he's going number one. So I'm leaning high school shortstop. As far as which one, I can't tell you that I know enough about these guys to tell you who they got to take. Upside on the offensive part of the profile would be the biggest bet to me that I would be willing to make. And hopefully he's batting number 2 in your lineup in 4 or 5 years.
I'll throw this curveball to you. And I've thought about this a little bit more than I probably should have. They sit at a very interesting spot in the draft, in my opinion. They're at that spot where they can potentially target a guy who might go a little bit later and go for that whole below slot bonus deal, right? Where, I don't know exactly what the 5th overall slot value is. It's probably in the $7 million range, be my guess. You find a guy who's probably more 10 to 12, but you really like his game, whether that's a pitcher, whether that's, one of these college bats. I love the name Ike Irish for some reason, the Auburn guy. A lot of people think he's the next Kyle Schwarber, but you get somebody to sign for $4.5 million in that slot, and then you use the $3 million extra to go and get a really, really high end, high school guy who slips out of the first round of the draft. It happens every single year. I just think it's such a crapshoot with this draft. Let's just throw numbers at it. Let's get as many guys with big upside as possible, see how it plays out. But again, you do that and you risk on passing on one of these guys who might be generational, who might be worth that 5th pick. So again, risk abound. But I mean, it feels like that strategy's worked for other teams in the past. And, the Cardinals seem to be in an interesting spot. If they can't get a Kate Anderson, if they can't get an Ethan Holiday, that maybe you just sort of try to play, fudge the system a little bit, try to build that bonus pool up and see what you can get from there.
And I guess if you do that, you damn well better be right about the high school kid you're taking in the second round, that he's not going to go to college and play. Like, I think that's probably obvious, but if you manipulate the pool a little bit, you could pull that off. I guess the question would just be, and like, it's that dilemma, right? I think we're both aware of what they're looking at. If you take that kid that's actually more of a 10 to 12 to 15, you really like him, but you'll never hopefully have access again to the kid that's at number 5. But if they don't love one of those guys at number 5, which I feel like you got to feel pretty good about 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
But if they don't, and if the draft board doesn't fall their way, like having a pivot point where you go, no, this other kid, like, somebody in that draft room is beating the table for this guy and saying we can accomplish other things if we do it this way. I mean, there's an argument to be made that would be viable as well. It's going to be really fascinating, though, to your point. Like, with where they are in the draft, if something happens at 1, 2, or 3 and a surprise comes and you go, wait a second, like that, because that's kind of the way it felt last year when the Cardinals end up sitting there at 7 and the pick before them, you've got still Caglione and Weatherholt both sitting there. And you're like, I don't really care who falls. We probably are taking one of the two, right? Like, I figure that was going to be the take, as they felt pretty good about it either way. So we'll see what they decide to do Sunday and what the draft board dictates that they're able to do. But it should be a lot of fun. And then my intention is to be down there by Monday for some All-Star Week coverage with the Home Run Derby on Monday, and then Tuesday's All-Star Game. So you'll hear from me and see from me on STL Sports Central, and then trying to sneak over to SEC Media Days as well to do a little bit over there is my plan for the coming week. So just a little quick plug to keep it tuned to the YouTube channel, to the website, stlsportscentral.com.
He's the hardest working man in all of sports, Brenden Schaeffer.
That's not
hey,
true.
bud, thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you to all of those who jumped into the chat. Cards again lose 8-2 to the Nationals. They will play the rubber game of that series tomorrow. Miles Michaelis against Mike Soroka. Boy, I know that pitching matchup is just making every pitching aficionado really excited about things. But that'll wrap up that series. This will wrap up our show tonight. For Brenden Schaeffer, I'm Chris Pelikan. This has been the Cards Central postgame show right here on STL Sports Central, where all content is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours, and we will see you tomorrow.